Welcome back. Now that we built a number of pipelines and data flows in ADF, it's time to put them all together so that they process the data without any manual intervention. In this lesson, we'll first try and understand our requirements for orchestration, and next we'll assess the capabilities within Data Factory to achieve this. And finally, we'll set up the call for the forthcoming lessons in this module. Let's get started with the requirements. Firstly, we want our pipeline executions to be fully automated. We do not want to be manually triggering the pipelines like we did during development. Second, we want our pipelines to be running at regular intervals, which we expect the new data to arrive or when an event has occurred. For example, a new file has arrived for us. Next, we want our activities to execute only when the upstream dependency has been satisfied. For example, we want the transformation activity to execute only when the copy activity to ingest the data has succeeded. Finally, we want the solution to be easy to monitor for progress, and also we want to be able to resolve any issues with ease. These are our requirements. Now let's have a look at the options available for us within Data Factory to achieve this. Data Factory allows us to chain the activities together and execute an activity based on the success, failure, or completion (i.e. status) of the previous activity. We implemented this in some of our pipelines already. In a similar manner, Data Factory allows to chain the pipelines together within the parent pipeline. We can then execute a pipeline based on the status of the previous pipeline. We haven't done this. What we'll do is we'll implement this for one of our pipelines in the next lesson. Data Factory also allows us to create dependencies between triggers, but there is only support for currently tumbling window triggers. There is no support for this in event-based or scheduled triggers. So you cannot make an event-based trigger to wait for a file to arrive as well as dependent on another trigger to follow. So we've already had some lessons on event-based triggers and scheduled triggers, but not on tumbling window triggers. So I would like to use this opportunity to implement this for one of our requirements in the following lesson. Finally, you can create custom-made solution to execute pipelines from different SDKs such as PowerShell.NET, Python, or STPA. I would only recommend one using these when you have exhausted all the other three options listed here. This is because you incur additional costs to create and maintain these custom-made solutions. And also, they're not obvious for anyone new joining a team because they're not available even within the Data Factory. They're sitting outside of the Data Factory. So I hope this has given you the options available for you. Let's now switch over to Data Factory and discuss the solutions we are going to use for each of our pipelines. Okay, here we are in the Data Factory. Now we got 10 pipelines, 14 datasets, and 2 data flows. What I suggest doing is actually group these pipelines into appropriate groups so that we can talk about them in a meaningful way. So as you can see here, we got 2 pipelines for ingestion and another 4 for processing data, which is transforming data. And then we got 3 for the SQLs. I'm going to create folders. When you have a big project, it'll be good to do it this way so that they are grouped together and it's easier for people to find when they need to find them. So I'm going to call the second one process, and let's call the third one as SQL. And now what you can do is you can drag the ones you want to into the appropriate groups. Let's do the same thing for the datasets. We got some lookup raw datasets, and then you've got processed, and then you've got SQL datasets. So let's do that. I'm going to create a new folder for raw, and then I'm going to co-create one for processed, and I'm going to create one for the SQL. And also I need one for the lookup. Let's move the objects accordingly. Okay, we've done everything on datasets. We can leave the data flows as they are. But as you can see here, we've nicely grouped everything together and it's easy to talk about them now. So as we know, we got ingestion for the population data that is based on an event-based trigger. So when the file arrives in a storage account, we pick the file, put it into our data lake, and then we process that data through our transformations. So this is being transformed by the Databricks notebook. And that data is used for data science purposes that doesn't get spliced. And the other set of data we got is the ingestion from GitHub for ECDC data. And then out of those, we process all of the data, put it into our data lake, and transform the data as well. And we only copy the cases and deaths, hospitalization, and testing data across to our SQL database. So we can clearly see we got two sets of processes, one for the ECDC data, one for the population data. And this one is based on the event. And this one is we go and grab the data what's available on the GitHub for ECDC data. So what I propose doing is we use the option of creating a parent pipeline and tying this with ingestion pipeline and the process pipeline into solution for orchestration for the population data and for the ECDC data. So we use a tumbling window trigger for that one. So in the next session, we'll look at doing the parent pipeline for this population data pipeline, and we'll create a corresponding trigger as well. And in the following one, we'll look at the ECDC data. But before we finish, let's publish our changes to the data factory so that they're saved. And I'll see you in the next session.